Anytime you had enslaved people coming together and figuring out how to seek their own freedom, that's a part of the larger freedom movement. That's a part of even the early strands of the Underground Railroad. The reason why Kentucky, northern Kentucky, and southern Ohio, the Cincinnati area and surrounding areas became a hotbed for abolitionist activity because it was a border state.
You could look across the river and see people living in a wildly different society. You could look across the river from Kentucky into a free state. And that really affected the way that people thought about slavery. They were really grappling with it on a day-to-day basis. You'll see in a lot of Kentucky families, people who have very different ideas, even within the same generation.
We are living in a border city. Cincinnati has often been called the northernmost southern city or the southernmost northern city. During Jim Crow days, people would be taking a train south, and when they got to Cincinnati, African Americans would have to get off the car and move to a different train car before they crossed the river into Kentucky. And that was happening in the 20th century. So the dialogue that we need to have is just making sure that we are talking about racial healing overall.
Yes, history is having a conversation with the present. History is informing us today. There's a connection between the freedom movements of days gone by and the freedom movements now. Enslavement still happens. There's not only sex trafficking in this state, in this country, but there's also traditional enslavement around the world. And so the call of freedom is still there today. I think part of the challenge is folks think that we're further along than we really are.
I had some really great history teachers, but there was a little bit of a tendency to portray morality as something that was inevitable. Like, of course slavery ended. Of course the Civil Rights Act was enacted. And the fact is that, no, not of course. Bad things happened throughout history. Terrible things happened to good people. And people who were very courageous stood up, put themselves in harm's way, and fought.
And so, if discussions can be had where people can examine the facts put before them in a non-threatening, non-emotional way, even though these are very emotional topics, but when you hold them up to the light of reason, what do they look like? What do they do? And how can they affect your thinking? It may not be an instant, it may not be immediate, but at some point, when you put all these threads together and you see the bigger pattern, the light goes off, and you can say, oh, wow, I didn't realize all these things fit together like that. But they do.